Well, good evening, everyone. This is Sevilla I Love, and here we are on this channel getting back to living and loving life again after a major life altering loss, such as being widowed. Tonight I'm speaking to you widowers, and we're going to discuss the grief. But first, Otis needs to say hello. Hey, Otis says hello. Good evening, everyone. This is Otis's podcast. Hey. So there's a guy that wrote into my channel, and he wrote something that really touched my heart and made me want to address this. I've been working on some stuff around men and grief lately, and I want to share with you what he had to say because it may ring true for some of you. He said, "I died 6 years ago when my wife of 35 years was taken from me by cancer. I seem to have baffled a local grief counselor. When I tried to explain that I can't remember happy times, can't even remember being married. I just feel like I've always felt this empty, always been this alone. It's all I know." So that's what he had to say. I want to talk to the men about grief. It's different for every person, and I know we all hear that. Men do tend to grieve differently because you don't have the same social protections around you, the same social resources around you. Most of you, or a lot of you, some of you. If it speaks to you, you can listen. If it doesn't, you can turn me off. But if a man doesn't have good social resources around him when his wife dies, let's say he is the only way that he gets his social needs met is through his wife. When he talks to anyone about his feelings, he's going to talk to his wife about it. His problems, he talks to his wife about it. His joys, he talks to his wife about it. And if she takes up that much space in his life and he doesn't have a lot of other outlets, he doesn't have a lot of other hobbies or things going on outside of the relationship, then when he's widowed, she takes 70, 80% of his life with him. A lot of really good men live their lives for their wives and children. They work hard. They do everything they can to make sure that she's happy and well cared for. And if they spend the last days of their wives' lives caring for her, then that's a massive expenditure of energy. Emotionally, psychologically, physically. And it could completely wipe somebody out. Now, this fellow that wrote in, he's 6 years out, and you'd think, wow, 6 years, you'd hope I'd be feeling better and be able to get on with life. No, he didn't say how old he is, but it's fair to say he's at least over 50. Okay. And if he's been married for 30 years, he's at least over 50, maybe older. And that sense of, I don't have any purpose anymore. And when he said to his grief counselor, I can't ever remember being happy, I want to talk a little bit about that. Sometimes I look at young people that I'll counsel, and they feel like this bad mood that they're in today is the way they've been feeling for the last month. But I may have seen them last month and know that they were actually feeling pretty good last month. So it's not entirely true. But their emotional capacity is so much in the moment that what I feel now is the way I'll always feel, or it's the way I've always felt. It must not have ever been any different. That's something that I see a lot in young people. Now, when somebody's been traumatized by a loss or an event, they get stuck in a mind loop of the traumatic event. And so that may be the emotional content of those moments. And so it becomes quite acute and they can't get out of it. Some people get stuck in a PTSD or if it's not PTSD, it could be a prolonged grief disorder. That is a new diagnosis in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And I can share with you, maybe here, some of those symptoms. And I'll put those on the screen for you of a prolonged grief disorder. But what do you do about it? how do you change it? How do you shift it? There's a lot of things that people on the internet and on grief channels are going to tell you to do. They're going to talk about the steps of grief. They're going to, and maybe I'll put those here, right? We're going to talk about the steps of grief. They're going to talk about getting out and making friends and being social. And those things are all really useful to do. But other people are saying that. I want to say something to you that other people maybe won't say. I want to talk to your sense of spiritual connection with your wife. Any of you, okay? Any of you men out there that are suffering terribly from the loss of your wife, that if you believe that once you die and that's the end, that's it, it's over, the casket's closed, end of story. And now the rest of your life is just meant to go on and suffer. Well, I want to bring something to your attention as well. And this is something that just by laying it out like this might make even more sense to you. We speak even closer to an experience you may be having and why it may be harder for you to get out of this grief loop than it is for other people. Let's say maybe a woman that has lots of friends and family around her, girlfriends, aunties, children that are sitting and hugging her and sitting in her lap and, taking care of mom, all those kinds of things. Men don't get that. And it's a cultural thing, but I think it's also kind of built into our men because there's something in a man that wants to, a good man, that wants to care, provide, and protect. And it's like a prime directive in their DNA for a good man. And when that prime directive is taken, the purpose of the prime directive is taken away, it's kind of like, what's the goal? Where's the battle? What's the objective? What's here to fix? Because what's here to care for? Because it's not here anymore. So now what? So hang on. So this is something that it was just speaking to a certain proclivity that men have, a certain way of thinking and being and feeling. And it says, he didn't write it, but it was a quote from someone else. It says, when men say, I'm not happy, you're a man. You're not supposed to be happy. Being happy is for women and children. You're meant to endure hardship. Instead of saying, I'm not happy, say, what can I do to make the people I care about happy? That's being a man. Okay, so some of you out there are going, oh, that's not fair. It doesn't matter if it's fair or not. It's the reality for a lot of men. And when life takes away the one thing that you lived to make happy and is gone, what's left for you? If that's the narrative you've always carried in your life. What I want you to hear is that maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another possibility that you could still live and you could actually be able to find room for some happiness in your life. And that a grief counselor, maybe the one you saw before, isn't working out. If the first one doesn't work, you can see somebody else. But sometimes it's a matter of getting with the right person, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a friend, or it's the right freaking book. And it's a matter of shifting the mindset in a very profound way, in a way that it enables you to be able to create more space around this loss. Because if you can't imagine ever having felt happy before, that you can't remember a time you ever were, then it may be rooted in more than just the loss of your wife. Okay? Because a lot of people grow up with a pretty significant trauma history where the things that they lived for, whatever it was, maybe they grew up with that kind of narrative. It's not, you don't get to be happy. You got to work. It doesn't matter if you're comfortable or not. You got to take care of the people around you. Is it hurt? That's too damn bad. Suck it up. And then when you get a woman that you really love, now you've got a purpose. Now, seeing her happy makes you happy. Seeing your kids taken care of gives you a deep sense of satisfaction. And that feels like happiness to you. Happiness. Okay, we're just using a label, but it makes you feel some kind of way where life feels purposeful and meaningful and satisfying. So now that that's gone, you've got another job to do. And maybe your meaning and purpose doesn't have to look like happy, but maybe it could look like, can I find something else to find some satisfaction in this life? Now, if you are a man that provided for your family and found a lot of love and satisfaction in your life with your wife, then what if you were able to take that love and that energy and transform it into something else, something new? Okay, so you have an a bit, you're made of energy, okay? You're made of energy. And this energy of grief and sadness, that's powerful. And it's all going into one outlet. But the problem is you're not powering anything up. Okay? It's just going. It's like a live wire that's just rolling, but it's not going anywhere. I'm going to plug it into something useful. And something useful could look like volunteering somewhere. Who could utilize something that you know how to do? And it might be something you do for free. It might be something you do for a small wage. It might be something that you do just for the hell of it because you like to. But there's got to be some kind of purpose. And if you had a purpose before in the woman that was alive, can you allow yourself to find some other kind of purpose? Could you show up and be a big brother to a little kid that needs some kind of a father figure, some kind of a man figure in his life? Because there's lots of little boys out there that need one. Or could you volunteer at a school where the kids are needing some extra support? Could you go to an animal shelter and help take care of the animals? It's just, these are seem like stupid little things. Could you build friggin' birdhouses for old ladies and give them away? Like anything. They did studies before and found, speaking of birdhouses, they found that, no, don't turn me off yet, because this is, I'm going to get to some more stuff here. So you keep me on now. I'm talking to you. They did studies where they had a birdhouse, and people that had birds that came to the birdhouse actually had better mental health and had less forms of depression just because they had a birdhouse in the back. Like, do you have an animal? Do you have a dog? Do you have something else to put yourself into? Because you need to continue to create purpose in your life, whatever it is. Okay, so here's the other thing I want you to consider, and this is something that other people aren't going to talk so much about on the grief channels. And that is your sense of connection with your wife. They are doing studies that show that staying connected, even mentally and emotionally, to your deceased loved one in very particular ways actually can improve your mental health, meaning help you to feel better, help you to feel less depressed, more purposeful, and more connected. So here's the thing with grief. We have them in life and then we lose them. Now there's this piece of them that's like, where the hell did they go? Where did they go? Because how did this brilliant, beautiful, lovely light of a being just suddenly cease to exist? So it had to go somewhere. Energy can only be transformed. It does not get destroyed. And as spiritual beings having human experiences, which is the bias of this channel, what I bring to you, whether you like it or not, that's what I bring. If you don't like it, you can turn me off. But here we go. Don't turn me off, because I want you to hear another perspective or deepen into one that you may have entertained, because there could be some hope here for you. That in the process of grief, we lose them, and then we're just like, okay, they're not here anymore. Now what? The ultimate goal is to become integrated with the present moment. Now, if the present moment means that they're no longer here, how do you manage that if you can't still get wrapped around the fact that they don't exist anymore, but yeah, they still exist? See, Otis, no. They're coming in. Otis can hear. Can you hear my dog barking? So if you can stay connected to them on the other side in the means of writing them letters, talking to them, okay, talking to them, tell them about your day. Tell them about your day. How are you feeling? Are you mad at them? Are you sad? Do you miss the hell out of them? Speak your words. Now, maybe you don't want to do it in public because people are going to look at you funny, but and if you don't care, maybe you could go have some fun in public. Who knows? But these days, you'll just blend in maybe. But anyway, but if you allow yourself to communicate and connect with them in the best way you can, are they going to talk back? Probably not, but you never know. Keep your eyes open for signs and possibilities. Now, here's what I've seen with people that have been deep, deep in grief. They say, oh, so-and-so said they had a sign from them, or so-and-so had a dream about them. Where's my dream? Where's my sign? And maybe if you lighten the grief, because grief is a very, very dense energy, if you lighten the grief by being of service to other people in some kind of way, go be a crossing guard for kids at the school, like whatever, change jobs and do something of service. If you can find some other way to lighten yourself, then that actually might open up a connection and a doorway for that connection to happen, which could be pretty cool. I mean, you may start having those dreams, having those signs that you feel like you've been missing. Now, some of you feel like you've been getting them all along, and if you have, brilliant. I'm so happy for you. Build on that connection. Now, the old way of grieving is that we have to shut it down and get on with life. And that shutdown, I think, sounds like to me, like in the post that was made that I read in the beginning here, that sounds like a man that shut it all down because the pain of losing his wife was so great that feeling anything, because if I remember being happy, then that's going to make this moment of sadness feel that much worse. If I remember a time in my life where I was joyful, that's going to make that moment now that much worse. That's a belief that your mind may have stepped up to put in place so you wouldn't suffer more than is necessary. Just shut it all down. Shut down everything. And if we shut ourselves down to joy, if we shut ourselves down, let me correct that. If we shut ourselves down to any kind of vulnerability in life, which is, I'm not going to feel this pain, I'm not going to share my pain, I'm not going to speak my pain to anyone. Not really. I'll say I lost my wife, but that's not the same. If I don't allow my grief to truly be witnessed, to really fully be with it, then what happens? You shut down everything else that's possible. Because if you don't have vulnerability, then that also shuts down the avenue to all other emotions. Do you see? Because that vulnerability is the pathway. The vulnerability to the pain is the pathway to joy, to happiness, to acceptance, to love. It may sound ridiculous, but they've actually done some research around it. Vulnerability is the pathway to joy, love, and happiness. And without it, we don't get it. We don't get anything. So if you've decided that love is just too damn painful, then this is the state you may stay in. So when I recommend that you do something of service for other people, it starts to open up your heart a little bit, because doing for others is a vulnerability. Because maybe they turn you down. Maybe they don't want your help. Maybe they criticize your work. So there's a vulnerability in being of service to other people. But if you could do it and stand it, then you might see yourself growing around the loss that you've had. Just growing around it. And as you grow around the loss stays the same size. If you grow around it. Now you get a little more space around it. And if you have a little more space, then that's where a little bit of joy might pop in, a little bit of satisfaction, a little bit of, hey, this moment's okay. Or maybe I can make it to the end of this life with my boots on. Right? And then who knows what else occurs in your life. But there's possibilities. Now, I'm going to put a link to a movie that I would like you to watch. And it's going to cost you a little bit because it's indie film, like, they don't have a big production or anything like that. And so it costs a little bit of money to watch it online. But it's called Living with Ghosts. And I want to recommend that you watch it. There's other things I want you to consider doing. I want you to get connected with other widows and widowers. Okay, go to soaringspirits.org. Soaringspirits.org is an online organization for widows and widowers. And getting some support from people who get it and understand it, that you don't have to worry about hurting, that are not going to give you a hard time. Aren't you over this yet? Can you get on with your life already? Like, talk to other people there. That's also being of service, because maybe you find yourself being of help to somebody else that's closer to their loss than you are. And maybe that helps you grow a little bit around your loss. Okay. I want to also encourage you to do something different than you've done before. A psychiatrist I used to work with called it relocation therapy. So you get out and go somewhere you've never gone before. A different town, a different city, a different country, a different fishing hole, like whatever, but do something different. Because once you start to change your pattern, then all the wheels start to shift and turn just a little bit differently. And that's something that you can do. Don't imagine that you have to change everything all at once. And you don't even have to imagine that you're going to go be happy someday. But what I want you to do is to consider just doing one thing different tomorrow. Okay? And it might be even changing something in the house that's always been this one particular way. Now, you may want to live in the mausoleum, but I also hear that you're suffering in a space of deep emptiness. And that is not why you're still here, to be in that emotional prison. So if you change just one thing, clean just one thing, fix just one thing, paint one wall, move the couch, change the bedding, put some things away in the bathroom, change something in the mausoleum that you may be living in right now, if that's your situation. Or maybe you're somebody that got rid of everything right away because you felt like, okay, it's over, get rid of it, let's be done with it. It may be time to take a memory walk and get closer to your pain and allow yourself to actually really feel it, because guess what? I know that there's this imagination that you might just explode and fall apart completely, but maybe you won't. Maybe you do withstand some of that flood of pain that comes out. Maybe it needs to come out. Maybe it's like a boil that is like too big. You go to the doctor, they break it. Or you could start to do something different. Now, I'm going to recommend a couple of books to you. Okay. The first book I want to recommend to you is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to put a link to the book as well. You can find it on Amazon. You can get it on audiobook. You can get it on Kindle. You can go down to any bookstore, used bookstore as well. You could probably find an extremely famous book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. If you could just for one day, just for today, I'm going to do something different today. And maybe that one thing that was different is that you posted on my channel. And I want to recognize that. I want to acknowledge that. And for those of you out there that are relating to this story, maybe you are watching this as the one thing that's different. And you're here. He says, you're not late, honey. You're here. No. Do one thing different today. One good thing. Not a thing that's harmful. Shift something and move the gears in a different direction. You will not be leaving your wife behind. You will not be betraying her, and it will not mean that you love her any less. Believe me, in my wildest imagination, all the wives are standing around me, urging me to tell you this, to get off your duff. Stop it. Know that you're loved beyond all measure, and there is no way that that will ever stop being true. The bond that connected you is eternal. It's eternal. And she'll be there waiting for you when you cross over, but not before your time. Not before your time. You still have things to do here, and it doesn't have to be a world-shaking event to be meaningful. It needs to be done with pure intention and a pure heart. Now, something else you might consider is listening to near-death stories on the internet. Yes, I want you to consider doing that. There's all kinds of channels with near-death stories, and everybody's story is different. But there's a great book if you just don't want to listen to people blather on and on like you're listening to me right now, apparently, is Dr. Eben Alexander. It was a neurosurgeon, and he wrote a book called, I think it's Proof of Heaven. It's called Proof of Heaven. Now, I don't particularly like the title because it kind of gives, when you use the word heaven, it kind of gives the religious connotation, and not everybody really thinks of it in that way. What I would love the book to say is Proof of the Afterlife is what I'd like it to say, but it doesn't. It's called Proof of Heaven. But he was a neurosurgeon and pretty much atheistic. When you died, you died. You're the end of it. That's over. And he had one of the most profound near-death experiences on record. And he talks about the science of it in there. And so the reason I recommend this book is because it's really good at delving into the details of the science behind the possibility that this actually is true. Now, I'm going to have a heck of a time editing this video, but I want to tell you all, there is hope for you. Keep coming back to this channel, watch the rest of my videos, watch other people's videos. Keep trying, even if you're just watching a video, until you're able to make a change in one little thing in your life. With much admiration, respect, and kindness I send to your heart, and belief that you can make a new life that looks different than it ever did before, than it will ever be again. But maybe something new can arise. And if you could live with the maybe that'll give you the energy to do the one thing different that needs to be done